Reading 93 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teachings of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll, Volume 1. Berlip, November 6, 1943. Cosmology. We will now speak for a short time about cosmology. I will put this question to you all. What different cosmological systems do you know about? Do you know what ideas of the universe and its construction have existed? Strictly speaking, a cosmology means a system which regards the universe as an ordered whole, formed on some definite plan. The word cosmos, which means order, was first applied to the universe by Pythagorean school, from which all European science was derived. All esoteric teaching regards the universe as ordered and formed on a definite plan. But the word cosmos has come to mean simply any view of the universe apart from any idea of order or origin. Since it is clear to us all that we live in a universe and that this earth is a small part of it, many thinkers in the past have advanced different cosmological ideas, which can roughly be divided into those that explain it as a haphazard and accidental, and those that regard it as ordered and so intelligent. You may think that it makes no difference to a person whether he believes in one cosmological system or another, or even if he never thinks about the matter at all. You will be wrong if you think in this way. A man from the work point of view has different centers, different parts of centers, and so on. He cannot possibly be in higher parts of centers or higher centers if he has wrong cosmological conceptions governing his mind. You know that this work can only begin with those who have magnetic center, i.e., who are convinced that there is something higher than themselves. How can you expect to reach anything higher in yourself if you do not believe that anything higher exists? Let us begin with the cosmological system taught in the work. This system starts from the absolute and descends in degrees or notes down to the most remote and smallest parts. Here you have very clearly expressed the idea of a higher. Again, from this cosmological conception is derived the idea of higher and lower man, of conscious and mechanical mankind. This conception teaches us that there is meaning beyond meaning, level beyond level, and it also teaches us that everything starts from meaning. The whole universe, in its great and small divisions, is derived from ultimate meaning, and therefore from mind and intelligence. It also teaches us that everything small and low down is derived from something greater and higher up. From this comes the work idea that the whole scale of creation is seeking to grow, to ascend, to reach something better than it is. So the work says that our moon, our little twig of the terrific cosmic tree, is seeking to grow and reach the state of the earth, and again that the earth is seeking to become eventually a sun, and so on. Now you know that we have the idea of evolution in science, as Darwin formulated it. But of course the idea of evolution existed long before Darwin, and it is as ancient as esoteric teaching. You know how this idea stares out at us in every page of the New Testament. Man is capable of undergoing an evolution, an ascent in the ray of creation. Here you remember the side octave from the sun, this Jacob's ladder. Darwin saw evolution under the aspect of mechanical selection, out of chance variation, that takes place over vast periods of time. I mean that he saw the idea of evolution, but he got it in a certain way, upside down, as it were. he thought that a monkey somehow or other became a man. He could see no mind, no meaning, controlling the universe, and therefore it is not surprising that he complained of having lost his higher aesthetic tastes. You know that you can always explain a thing by its small parts. You can explain a horse by its bricks. You can explain a house by its bricks. But you know quite well that the whole house existed in the architect's mind long before it became manifest in time and space. You can explain a picture in terms of the mineral colors, but do you think that the tubes of paint make the picture or the mind of the artist? Now, when you see the explanation of an organic whole, such as the human body, solely in terms of its small constituent parts, and cannot understand that a thing must be related to all its parts and that they could not have arisen by chance, your mind is shut to all higher meaning. You then explain the higher by the lower. You explain a motor car by its nuts and bolts and so on, and not by the idea behind the motor car that has related all its different parts together. Certainly you can argue that a motor car could not exist without its different parts, or that an oil painting could not exist without its tubes of paint. But do you think you have got the right explanation in thinking in this way? Can you not see that if you think only in this way, from below upwards, your mind remains shut to thinking from above downwards? Surely the idea of a motor car preceded the construction of it. Now, do you think that the idea is prior to its working out in visible terms, such as a motor car that you can touch and handle? Which comes first? Is mind first, or is mechanism, as the vehicle of mind, first? You all know that there has been a great loss of meaning in the last century or so, or rather since the Reformation, which has made it possible for scientists to exist. An entirely new cosmological system was conceived when the so-called Renaissance took place, which is more or less synchronous with the Reformation. This was certainly necessary, inevitable. Previously, the cosmological conception was that at the head of all things stood God. This conception became, as it were, worn out and abused to such an extent that no one was allowed to think for himself. Only the canon of Scripture was allowed. Then, an entirely different cosmological conception came in. In the first place, the earth was no longer the center of the universe, and secondly, the whole universe was seen as under mechanical laws. It has often been said that once it was proved that the earth was not the center of the universe, a great revolution in thought took place. I would add that a revolution in feeling did not take place. We seem to be as vain as ever. Science is reluctant even now to admit that there is life anywhere in the vast universe, save on our earth, and still ascribes to itself its own discoveries, not realizing that it is studying a given universe that transcends the human mind and its capacity. The task of the future is to reconcile the older and newer standpoints. That is why the work says that one of its aims is to unite the wisdom of the East with the science of the West. Unless science discovers what is called religion, and unless religion discovers what is called science, the mind of man will be split into two irreconcilable sides, and indeed, we might think that the whole world today suffers from schizophrenia. Now, if your cosmological system, if you have one, is based on the idea that there were somehow or other a lot of atoms derived somehow or other from somewhere or other, which condensed to form billions and billions of worlds and galaxies, and that somehow or other life started, and somehow or other made different animals, trees, fishes, birds, men, women. Gradually, little by little, then your mind is not properly furnished with the requisite ideas and understanding for you to reach the higher parts of centers, and finally, higher centers themselves, which compose the very complex organism of man. You will be looking down like cattle and will be incapable of looking up. You will see the explanation of the most wonderful things like consciousness, thought, feeling, sensation, and so on, in the little small instruments that render them possible. You will be boiling up the artist's picture and analyzing its chemistry. Then what happens is that you will be more and more under the domination of matter, seeing in matter the explanation of everything. The result will be that internally you will be more and more under the influence of machines, of external organizations, coming from outside. But if you begin to think that there is not a single thing that you can study in any branch of science that is not a miracle, if you realize that the properties of matter cannot be solely explained in terms of matter, then something inside you will turn the other way and round and begin to look at the source of meaning. You remember the definition that Plato gave of the difference between a man glued to the senses and a man of understanding? He said the first believes that matter created mind, whereas the second believes that mind created matter. Which do you yourself think is prior in scale? Do you think that mind and consciousness arose accidentally out of some chance combination of atoms whose origin you cannot explain? Or do you think that mind created matter and all its possibilities, and that you live in an intelligent and ordered universe? It is on these two questions that the whole future of humanity at present depends. If you say there is nothing, then well and good. If you say there is something, then well and much better. I have never any quarrel with science itself. Science is obvious. The mother of Europe, for example Greece, laid down all the formulations of science long before Christ. Then came the Christian teaching in this short 2,000-year era of ours, in this experiment upon man, created as a self-developing organism. It seems that the idea was to unite the two aspects of truth, outer and inner, and this idea has no doubt failed, although in the beginning Pythagoras taught about religion and science together, and in those times no one thought there was any contradiction between scientific facts and the gods. Every center has two sides, one turned towards the external senses and the literal meaning of everything, and the other side turned towards higher centers which represent higher levels in the ray of creation. Balanced man must learn to use both sides and to understand them and bring them into relationship so that there is no contradiction. And if he excludes one in favor of the other, he is undeveloped. Note, I repeat that it is not science that is wrong. The facts of science are perfectly correct, although fluctuating. It is the interpretations of science that are wrong.